Welcome back, everybody. My name's Rachel, and this is my book club. I have never been so upset in my life. That's a lie. And everything happens in these 30 pages. So today we're going to be talking about The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. So this book is the first book in this series. The second book doesn't come out till June, which I just found out. I went to go buy it, and then it said pre-order, and I was like, oh, so that was unfortunate. This story follows our main character, Aurea. She is an adopted / kidnapped human girl who is raised by the vampire king, whose name is Vincent. And their relationship we see early on is pretty close. You know, she still calls him dad, and she sees him as a father, and she justifies their complicated relationship. So she lives in this vampire kingdom, and she wants to join this tournament. This tournament, the Kajari, is a Hunger Games, gladiator, Roman Empire fighting pit sounding tournament where the winner, the last survivor of this tournament, gets to have one wish granted by their god, Nyaxia. While we're getting introduced to Aurea, we see that she's kind of become the Spider-Man of this vampire kingdom. In this kingdom, they have this setup where vampires are able to drink animal blood, and they have it set up in a way so that they shouldn't have to kill the humans in the human district. Obviously, that doesn't always work, so Aurea has taken it upon herself to kind of vigilante her way through the night and kill these not-so-innocent vampires. Very early on, we're shown that Aurea is incredibly capable of taking care of herself. There are these memories of her being taught by Vincent, her father, how to protect herself against vampires, how to fight, and so on and so on. She's a little bit of a Mary Sue in that sense. She's kind of overpowered in some ways, I would say, but we'll get into that. Aurea enters the Kajari, and we meet a few of the other characters who are milling about, some scary vampires. There's politics involved. We have this classic war waging on between the two different kinds of vampires and who should rule and who will be better. So what we learn in the beginning is that the reason Aurea wants to enter this tournament is because she wants this wish from Nyaxia, and her wish would to become the Coriate of Vincent, which is kind of explained as like magical soulmates. Something similar that you see in a lot of fantasy novels where you're kind of soul-bound to someone. It's explained that they would be able to share powers, and Aurea would become a vampire, and then she could go out into the world to find her parents or other family members without being worried about being hunted down or getting caught up in something that she's not prepared for in the process. Vincent, being a vampire for whatever reason, is very supportive and very father-like of Aurea. He is very protective. He wants to see her live and thrive and know how to protect herself without turning her into a vampire. His motives are hard to read because he's written as a very serious, stoic dad, emotionally distant character. He's kind of just there being a stoic dad, telling her to not die. To be honest, I probably am not going to go into too many details about the tournament itself because the tournament itself did not push the plot forward very much. It was almost just like it was there as a setting. And every once in a while it'd be like, okay, you're going to have to do this challenge now. But it really wasn't as prominent as the romance and relationship between some of our main characters. A lot of the growth that happens for some of our characters happens outside of the challenges of the tournament. And the challenges of the tournament are only there to ensure that we get to the end, which is meeting Nyaxia. And of course, it also provides a platform where someone has to die, so there's extra suspense there. As you might guess, this follows the classic tale of this girl who's been raised to believe by her dad that they deserve to be the ruling class of vampires, and the other class of vampires are just stupid, violent ding-dongs who don't deserve to wear this crown after how hard Vincent has fought to be a good ruler, so on and so on, right? She gets to be a part of it by sharing his power, and then she'll be able to go out into the world and find her family, and all is good, right? She has a very, very solid plan in place, and she has very, very solid beliefs in place before entering this tournament. And we get to see her beliefs kind of change and grow as she meets these other vampires and characters who are not exactly in line with what she thinks. We see a lot of those themes being played out where she begins to question her own judgment and the way she was raised as she meets these other characters, specifically Rain and I think it's Mishka. I'm going to say Mishka because I like how that sounds better. Rain makes himself known very early on in the story as this incredibly powerful vampire. He's beautifully good looking. He's incredibly charming. He's very likable. I fell for that trap. I fell for the trap. I liked him a lot from the very beginning. I liked Mishka a lot from the very beginning. They were just good. They were just fun to read. And so we have this trio of characters that gets built very early on. Rain wants to learn more about, the king's princess who's in the tournament. Why is his human little toy in the tournament, right? It's kind of his cover for why he wants to get to know her early on. And so they start to build this weird kind of keep your enemies close alliance where they're like, we're going to work really well together and then we'll figure out who's going to kill who later. They build an alliance. They learn to fight together. They learn to trust each other, right? And what happens is finally we get to this point where we realize that we are truly friends, right? Rain, Aurea, and Mishka are all actually getting along, and you start to realize that they actually care about one another's well-being. We get to this breaking point where Aurea is really questioning what is right. She's seen some things in the tournament and certain things have been brought to light that really makes her question Vincent's morality and kind of what he stands for and therefore what they will stand for when they're working together. This question never fully gets resolved. It's a question that's there that Aurea doesn't want answered. She knows that she wants the power that Nyaxia can give her to find her family, and that kind of drowns out the immorality of some of the other things that have been going on. But meanwhile, while those kind of moral questions are happening, instead of answering those questions, we are distracted by just how absolutely hot Rain is. It is made abundantly clear that they get along really well. They trust each other. They fight well together. Together they're just absolutely overpowered and unstoppable. Finally, they get together. Emotionally and physically, they admit that they care about each other. This is the night before the final trial of the tournament. You know that they both have to live somehow, right? We have this whole romance playing out. There's a second book in the series, but how? We don't know. So we go through this final tournament and we get to this epic final scene where they're in this coliseum fighting each other, and Rain gives himself up to Aurea. Rain has admitted somewhat that he needs to win this tournament. He doesn't delve into all the details, but he wants power from Nyaxia and he wants to do good with it. And he lets Aurea best him in this final fight. And Nyaxia comes down to grant Aurea her wish, and instead of wishing for this soul bond with Vincent, she thinks about the loss that she just experienced from losing Rain and wishes him back to life. Man, Princess of the King just resurrected a rebel in this tournament of death. And you think that would be enough political turmoil, but it's not. Let me just tell you something. If you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm not a reader, I'm not really made for reading 450-page books. Okay, for this book, here's all you need to read. Flip to page 406. You see how close we are to the end? Flip to page 406 and read the last 34 pages. And everything happens in these 30 pages. All you need to know before these last 30-something pages is that Aurea is a human and she wants to wish for vampire powers, and then she falls in love with Rain in this tournament. That is all you need to know, and then read these last 34 pages and get wrecked. The terrible thing about this book is plot-wise, it's fairly slow-paced, and then everything happens in this little bit right here. I have never been so upset in my life. That's a lie. I've never been so angry so quickly while reading a book than when reading this book. Not very much happened story-wise for a long time. And then boom, last 34 pages, everything comes together and falls apart all at once. Oh my God. I don't even know how to explain this. So one of the only things I correctly predicted about this book is that Rain is like the vampire heir. And then he takes off his shirt and he doesn't have like the telling scar. And I was like, nuts. I was like, I wasn't right. That's too bad. But then later on, it's revealed that his scar was hidden by some magic. I don't know. I forgot. It was all just a fever dream. Find out that Rain is actually the heir. When Aurea brings him back to life, he wishes for Vincent's power so he can kill him and take over. I'm getting so angry. Before this final tournament, when Aurea kills him, before this happens, they come together physically and they admit that they have feelings for each other, and it's very romantic, and I love them both and I want them to end up together. But then, so Rain wishes from Nyaxia to take Vincent's power so that he can kill him and become the vampire king or whatever, right? And he has not disclosed any of this to Aurea, and so she is completely and utterly shocked to find out that he is actually the person that she has considered the bad guy the whole time. In this last ditch effort of a couple chapters, Aurea's boyfriend just killed her dad in front of everyone after stealing his magical abilities. This whole rebellion rises up to take over the kingdom, and they're going to arrest Aurea. They're trying to decide if they should murder her or what. And in this little debate where they're trying to decide what to do with her, this mark appears that she is also an heir. He is the heir of one vampire clan, and she is the heir of the other. So they are literally meant to be enemies. Nyaxia, the goddess of death, has wished them and willed them to be enemies, even though they love each other. And so Rain has taken over the kingdom in a violent fit of murder, and Aurea has had to witness this whole thing just to find out the person that she loved was lying to her the entire time, betrayed her, murdered the only person she's ever trusted and loved right in front of her. And then she also finds out that she's the vampire heir, even though she's not a vampire, she's a human. Or is she? Ugh. That's why Vincent, the vampire king, took the time out of his day to save a human girl, is because she's actually half vampire. And so, upon this discovery that she's actually kind of a vampire and the heir to the throne, and they're supposed to be enemies, Rain talks his friends out of killing her. Somehow, Rain convinces all of his friends that he should marry Aurea in order to keep her in check. I don't know. Aurea, doesn't really agree, but she doesn't really have a choice. It's impossible to explain, but it's written really well, actually. Rain still cares about her, despite all the terrible, terrible things he just did, and Aurea still loves him, even though she actually also doesn't hate anyone anymore. She loves him a lot, and she also hates him a lot, and it's very confusing and very conflicting for everyone involved. I have never been so angry that I couldn't jump into the next book right away ever. I went on Amazon to buy this book just to find out that it doesn't come out till June, and I am going to have to harbor all of this anger until then. Their relationship is very raw because they both know that at the end of the day, only one of them will survive. I think Carissa Broadbent wrote this book with a very purposeful intention, and she succeeded in making me very upset because I fell in love with Rain. Actually didn't love Aurea too much just because she did seem a little Mary Sue. She did seem a little overpowered and unrealistic in certain ways. I would say the way Aurea was written she was a little too perfect, but that's okay. I still liked her and I still kind of understood her as a character. I loved Rain for his character, for his charisma and his flaws. I thought he was written really well for the kind of romance that we're going for. Just to have all that torn away, for him to murder her father in front of everyone, and then have the audacity to say that she has to marry him. Oh my God. This man has been falling in love with Aurea and sleeps with her and talks about how much he cares about her when he knows that he is gonna have to kill her father. And I know he thinks that he's like, well, I'm just gonna make love to her and then let her kill me, and that'll be the end of it. Selfish, 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 because it didn't even work out that way. He thinks he's gonna get away with sleeping with her and then dying peacefully on this battlefield or something. Stupid enough to not think that she cares about him enough to bring him back to life. And now he has to fulfill his obligation to murder this guy. Selfish. I am mad at Rain because all he needed to do was not sleep with Aurea and not get her feelings all entangled in this and just go about his rebellion business without getting her so emotionally involved. He did not have to get his emotions involved. He did not have to get his body physically involved with her, and yet he did. And then he's like trying to win her forgiveness and saying all this stuff like, are you gonna kill me, Aurea? And she's like, maybe. Yeah, maybe you should kill him. Liar, betrayer. I'm angry. I'm angry because I love him and I cannot believe that he would do this. I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know. I can't even form a solid opinion because I'm so emotional on the ending of this book. All in all, I thought the writing of this book was okay. The story was really good in certain parts and very basic in others. I did really enjoy it. It wasn't as action-packed. It wasn't as plot-heavy as I thought it was going to be. I actually think Vincent being Aurea's father was one of the more interesting relationships, especially earlier on before we have this relationship building with Rain. It was really interesting to see how complex the father-daughter relationship was for Aurea and Vincent and how that really affected Aurea as a character. Certain aspects of her character were not written extremely well, but all in all, she was, very hurt by the loss of her human parents and very affected by how Vincent raised her. I liked her. She didn't have as much depth or as many flaws as I would have liked, but I do like her. She was still snarky and witty and angry enough of a character that I did enjoy her and Rain's banter especially. Rain's character, I think, was the best out of all of them as far as depth. He has a good backstory. He obviously is the source of the huge twist at the end, and he has a lot of kind of moral grayness about him where you kind of see him battling back and forth with his thoughts, his feelings, his beliefs, and his different experiences. I don't know. I was kind of crushing on him too. We do get these hints of things that we might see in the second book, but it's hard to know. When I was reaching the end of this book, when I was getting towards the end of the trials and the book was wrapping up, I was like, I was thinking to myself, I was like, we're not really set up for success here, right? And I was very solid on giving this book 3 stars, which is lower for me. Meh, this is a 3-star book. And then I read that last 30 something pages, and that last 30 something pages was 6 out of 5 stars for me. It was just nonstop. I do think it was very worth it. At the end of the day, I did give this book 4 stars, just for the pure chaos at the end. I actually really loved it. All in all, I definitely think this book was well worth it. I cannot wait for the second one. And I'm really excited to announce for my next video, I am going to be going over the entire Crescent City trilogy. The 3rd book comes out on Tuesday. Well, I guess by the time this video comes out, that book will be out. But in 1 week from now, is that right? So I'm going to be reading the 3rd book and getting that video to you guys. It'll be coming out February 10th for the Crescent City trilogy. Don't forget to check the description and friend me on GOODREADS so I can see what you guys are reading. Otherwise, thank you again for watching and see you next time.